Part 2. Morning, Mr. Texas Paul. How we doing this morning? It's 8:07 in the morning, West Coast time. Saturday, the 1st of February, 2025. Barely awake and barely alive. We were Johnson, Roseman, California, the armpit of the Antelope Valley. How you doing, sir? Okay, part 2 in our little madcap here. Interesting to understand about an African ruler in the 1300s who based his opportunities and testing out his religion. And I was trying to see the relevance of this. And I'm thinking, I can't pin him down. If he wasn't relevant in history, if he wasn't making anything in history about it, except being rich, that's about it, I'd rather go for the accomplishments at this point. Now, this is Black History Month, is it not, sir? And my coffee, well, it's coffee. If I put a little cafe francais in here, it might taste a little bit better, but, cream and coffee and sugar. I had seen in my lifetime black pilots who made a difference in U.S. history, in history of world. An aero squadron, an experimentation of black aviators created to fight in World War II. And if the program was going to be successful enough, they better rack up the kills. In World War II, they did. Tuskegee Airmen made their mark. And because of that legacy, passed on to generation, how about the first black American who actually came into space? It took them long enough because of all the racism and all the bigotry and all the stupidity that we threw at them. They're just as capable as anybody else. Now, I was looking at the Wikipedia here. Now, not too many people can judge and rely on it, but sometimes I do, especially on certain aspects that I need to learn about. This is Black History Month, right? Well, how about we learn about black astronauts that made a difference in U.S. history? That people are like scratching their heads. It's like going to an air show back in the early to mid 90s, or well, actually between 80s and 90s, and seeing a couple of old farts next to an old plane, and you're a snot-nosed kid, don't know your ass from a hot rock. You like seeing the military jets, but you don't even realize that these guys preceded the jets. These guys flew in an old plane with a red tail on it. Who are these guys anyway? They called themselves the Tuskegee Airmen in a hangar where their planes were sitting there. I didn't realize, I didn't know, and neither did the general public know about the Tuskegee Airmen. It only took us a few decades to understand the accomplishments of these guys, and I had seen them in their 70s. They're no longer with us. When I started seeing the theatrical films about them, I didn't realize I was seeing history right in front of my face. It's like watching Band of Brothers, and then you see the actual soldiers of the 101st Airborne, 506 Para Infantry. But did anybody ever talk about the Tuskegees? Nada. And when I started seeing about these guys, I'm like, we had black aviators back in that time? Much like we actually had black sailors who did lower work in the ships. I'm checking up on black sailors honored in World War II. I'm going to the Smithsonian. Black sailors exonerated 8 years after deadly World War II disaster. Well, Port Chicago, yeah. 256 black service members were punished. That connection was an explosion that took out a hell of a lot of people. Port Chicago, California. Deadly explosion. And these guys were unjustly tried and convicted for refusing to go back to work because there was dangerous conditions. They were the labor force. They were the labor force, Paul. These guys were blamed. And these guys were convicted. A lot of them weren't alive to see it. The conviction reversed. But back then, they were the slaves. According to history.navy.mil, there are American sailors that were celebrated in the United States Navy. Goes as far as back as 1775 through 1783. We're going to talk about Black History Month. We want to talk about the enormous contributions that were made and never sung about. How about one particular guy for science, Neil Tyson, astrophysicist? That particular gentleman. He gets my vote for being the most influential when it came down for science. Neil deGrasse Tyson. I am in awe of this man. I am in awe of this man, of his accomplishments. Teaching science, being part of the scientific community. He may have been controversial in a hell of a lot of things, but this guy he's a Carl Sagan. He's a Carl Sagan level. This is one astro professor I wish I actually had the pleasure of meeting and being taught by. I'm taking a class this semester in my community college of African American literature. The only piece of literature I know about African American was from the book Roots. But that was made into a television show. People had argued for years whether or not if this was actually legitimate or not. And it was shot down as a piece of fiction. But nevertheless, an important piece of fiction because it gave us a glimpse of one of our darker times in United States history and about our own nature. I'd like to celebrate Black History Month if I'm allowed, but it's DEI. It doesn't equate. When I heard about this stuff happening on the East Coast, I was afraid the stuff being bounced back on the West Coast over here. Because West Coast, we're a little bit more liberal about things. It pissed me off. How culturally screwed up they are on the East Coast, including the South, and also in the White House. Guys like Neil deGrasse Tyson would never have been able to reach their status. It's not social status, it's the level of excellence. If we didn't have anything like DEI out there to do it, to teach the young of their knowledge and their experiences. I don't get it, Paul. I just don't get it. I grew up in a culture that, yeah, the black people were looked down and frowned upon. We had Malcolm X coming out of the woodworks and trying to show what black power is all about. Not the military, but of helping out a community left and right. Power of humanity. Power of caring about people left and right. Of education. What was wrong about that? Was ignorance that celebrated back in the 1960s that we had to replay this whole damn shit all over again here? I look at the blacks in my own neighborhood here. These guys have done things I probably would not have done in my lifetime. They got their own lives. And probably did things I probably would have done or probably not have done. But does it give me the right to denigrate the living crap out of them? Is that necessary? Sure, there was a leader out in Africa who accumulated vast wealth not just because of stock speculation, but because he was doing something for his people. If he was sharing culture, if he was actually sharing things instead of conquering people left and right, like we've seen the warlords happen decade after decade after decade in Africa that we've studied about. Yeah, I heard about the Shaka warlords back in Africa. Pieces of it here and there, but that wasn't relevant in our history. And yeah, the rum trade that we actually had. You want to get your rum? Well, you got to trade. You got to get a triangle going on. Tobacco, rum, slaves. Treat the black person as just a slave. I'm looking at other people's accomplishments. I went crazy and gaga when I heard about the first black African. I wasn't quite sure why. Not until I had some research and perspective down the road and understanding the accomplishments that these people made in the 30-year space shuttle program. Hoisted out of retards from other people who tried to struggle for equality, for equal rights, for voting privileges, for being a human being in a country that didn't accept them as such, who had a civil war, fought not just over them, but for ideologies left and right. That for decades we had to do reconstruction work. And we still fostered anger and hatred that spews over to this day. You want to talk about the legacy of human beings? We're so screwed up we don't even realize it. How can I justify this to someone who doesn't know about the human race? Or to our own future generations? What was my part in it? Did I add to the problem? Or was I adding to the solution? I'm trying to fathom all of this. Someone has to. Someone's got to make a case to the universe at this point of what the hell we're doing to ourselves and to each other. If there were any advanced civilizations out there in the universe, they'll be judging us as the most poorly advanced, if any advanced, creatures. And how many millenniums has got us to this point? We're still trying to fight the way on social equality, social awareness, of trying to be better than what we are. I'm still trying to figure that one out. As a kid, I didn't think about it. I was reading science fiction books about dystopias, about fantasy, about realms, exploration. I watched Star Trek and sci-fi shows of different cultures out there in the universe. I was trying to get myself adjusted by watching other people's works, trying not to be judgmental about their own appearances. And then discovered the true fact of racism happening. Ignorance, arrogance, indifference, and being subjugated by it. Being subjugated by it, showing me that other people who had the same asshole traits as us poor white folk did. And that kind of racial tendency comes out and says, we white folks are a minority now. How dare we be the minorities? We were the masters of the universe and now nothing? How dare you? The indifference and ignorance and injustice, all of hell. Stick the chest out. Just stick the chest and the chin up here. How dare they? The gods are to fear us. A long time ago, there was a Middle Eastern man trying to make his way across the deserts of Palestine. Born in a poor country. Celebrated as the Son of God. His skin would have been not of pure white or white as they come. It would have been darkened. Guided with principles and thoughts of maybe, just maybe, humanity could be a hell of a lot better. I tried to tell an angry, indifferent world, and again judged by it. And he proclaims that, God forgive them, they don't know what the hell they're doing. Some things have to be put into perspective, Paul. I'm not a guru. Observed, read, figured things out in my lifetime. Not pushed agendas down people's throats. I always kept a watchful eye and ear. Whatever tidbits I could learn, putting in the back of my head. Storing them for maybe one day or two, or do some further research. And get pissed off when people throw the injustice around. You go to a town square because of a Civil War figure being pulled down because what that figure represented. The same anger and vitriol that tried to protect it because they won't be replaced. I can't justify this to the universe. I can't even justify it to anybody else, not even us. All I can do is plead a case to the universe. Try to be gentle when you try to judge us harshly. We still don't know any better. We mistreat everybody. We think we know better. The arrogant scum of the universe we are. A universe that recycles itself, reformulates matter into something else, changes molecular densities and subatomic and quantum natures to where we've got different things happening as the universe ages. But as we, as a petulant society, have we learned a damn thing in our lifetime? I hate it when I get philosophically cosmic like this. Because I'm always afraid that we're so damn misunderstood. But it's not just that. We misunderstand ourselves. Maybe Gandhi was right a long time ago. Maybe our philosophical leaders out there who tried to teach us pathways that we couldn't even accept. We're too damn warlike in our own genetic nature. Fight for survival is the only thing we know how to do. But not for the species, but for our own individuals. And that means putting people down because of skin color, because of culture, because of faith, because of something that the other person doesn't like or fears too damn much. This is why we have these cultural months to understand ourselves, because it's part of human nature. At times, yeah, I get angry at them. Not just as the perpetual white skin, but also some of those who use that skin as a battering ram on other people, saying, "See this? I'm this color, and I'm this kind of face here, and I'm this and that. How dare you? Who do you think you're dealing with?" Arrogance, ego, megalomania, pride, fear. We're all guilty of it. We feign ignorance, claim victim, move on. As we pound people's faces in. We're the bully boys. We don't accept transparency, responsibility, or be accountable. Three things, Paul. Three. Just three. No, we blame it on the other guy. It's your fault for being a slave out there because I need of your services freely. And I don't care about the condition of you. I still need you, period. Deal with it. I don't think you're capable of anything, so deal with that one. I'm just as guilty as the next person about these things. I am, Paul. I think we all are. We just don't care to think about it or say about it as much. But we're sure as hell demonstrating it on a constant basis. People have made incredible accomplishments in their life. We say, well, mine is more important than yours. What you do? Well, I don't care. There's nothing compared to me. Man, that we the biggest damn fools and idiots in the universe. We ought to be celebrating our differences, our heritage. We ought to be celebrating and learning from each other. Maybe making something better out of ourselves. We don't know how to do that anymore. That makes me more sad about our own human condition than anything else. Because we don't know and we don't care. And if we did, we weren't doing as much. care about anybody else but ourselves. How dare us? Makes me quite sad.